people who grew up in third world countries, what was the biggest shock for you when moving into a developed country? That things would get fixed. I had a vending machine in my dorm room. It broke down and said, well crap, guess no more vending machine. Absolutely flabbergasted when I saw the machine repaired and working. The lights. So many lights, from street lamps, traffic lights, huge buildings lit up all night. Oh, and the highways blew my mind. They were so wide and full of so many cars. I was 6 and I'll never forget that first drive from the airport to my new home in December. It was also my first time seeing snow. I went to rural Kenya for work once and the lack of lights was the first thing I noticed. I grew up in a very small town, out in the county in the United States, so I was used to less light pollution than most people here. But I'd never experienced anything like this. Just a total lack of any electric lights for miles and miles. I visited my cousins in the US once. I was surprised that your houses don't have walls around them. There were only those fences at the side and back that pretty much anyone can jump over. Where I live, the only houses who don't have walls surrounding them are those in compounds or subdivisions that have roaming security guards. Paid security guards, not volunteers like the neighborhood watch kind of thing. I visited Germany once with my family. We were about to cross the road when a Porsche came racing through. Living in India, we experience daily traffic mishaps and there is negligible concern regarding pedestrian safety and courtesy. So we were actually shocked when the driver literally halted to a stop and insisted on us crossing the road. There was no traffic light, no zebra crossings, nothing, and we actually were used to letting cars pass by before walking. So this was the biggest shock to us. The postal system. The logistics of delivering millions of letters to millions of homes on a daily basis is astonishing, especially at that price. The idea that I can send a letter across the country and have it reliably delivered the next or possibly even same day is truly impressive. I am astonished at this, and I have always lived in the US. We majorly take our postal system for granted. Toilets. Flushing toilets that you could repeatedly flush to. Yo, WTF, I live in England, ain't no toilets allowed to be repeatedly instantaneously flushed, WTF. How traffic is so much better and how clean the streets are. How you're able to walk around in most streets at any time and not have to worry about being stabbed, shot, robbed, kidnapped, etc. This was the biggest thing for me when I went to Japan. Compared to my home country, Kyoto was an immaculate freaking theme park. Buildings and streets were clean. Pedestrian crossing lights actually worked. The metro didn't stink of pee and fast food grease. The quality of the public infrastructure and how respectful city planning is with pedestrians. Sydney is full of beautiful little gifts in the shape of shortcuts, stairs, parks, pathways, everywhere. It truly is a joy to just walk through the city. Also, dogs are more polite than people where I come from. Sydney is the first Western settled city I visited last year, and I can't thank my lucky stars enough that I am moving there permanently in a few months. Drinking water directly from water taps. I tried to explain this to my kids. They had trouble understanding where water comes from before it arrived at the two. At Song, an African man who was staying with me came rushing in the first week he was staying me and woke me up. He was extremely excited that there was a garbage truck with a motorized arm and was picking up the wheelie bins as it went down the street. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? He kept exclaiming over and over again. Amazing. Amazing. It made me laugh very hard, but he was a lovely guy. South African here. The thought of a garbage truck with a motorized arm literally blows my mind. There's absolutely no rules here that state where our bins should be placed, which I imagine is the foundation you need before you can have a truck pick him up by itself. How little theft there is. I was always told to always mind my bag and make it clear I'm holding it tight. Now I can freely leave it beside me, sometimes not even look. I've had friends leave a purse on a table in a restaurant and I made jokes about how easy it would be to steal it. Just a lot more relaxing in public due to less theft. Another one is how less physical fighting in schools there is. From a young age I was always told if someone hits you, hit them back harder, but when we moved to UK my dad told me before my first day of school, if someone hits you, tell the teacher. Even from a poorer area in New Zealand to Australia, in the schools here, they leave their school bags outside the classroom. It's so strange. When I went to school we had our bag under our seat, between our feet if it wasn't actually being worn. That being said, every time I'm in a crowd I'm thankful for the basically non-existent pickpocketing and stuff. Coming from the worst country to a better one, it surprises me how easy it is to do a transaction online. Apply visa, do it online. They will notify you once they need documents, once you are ready, etc. Every step of the process. Pay bills? Fine. Do online banking. Order food, groceries? Do it online. Call for delivery. Schedule for appointment? Call. Do it online. Meanwhile in my country, you need to all this physically. Fall in line for hours. Registration done. On to the next step. Payment. Oh, you need to go to the bank, collect the receipt and come back here. You want to do it online? Good luck with the crappy websites and slow internet. I could go on and on. It's day and night comparison. How old the houses are. I was expecting modern construction like in my country, but instead saw old buildings which, ironically, valued more than even the more modern ones. Old buildings are often closer to the city center, so it's also location. Plus they may have historical value. People's personal space is surprisingly vast. A newspaper article suggested that the personal distance between strangers in Argentina is the same of that of a couple in Canada. How things actually work. You can rely on your electricity not going out at least twice a day. If you buy something and it breaks, there's warranty with little to no hassle. Internet actually works more than it doesn't. Public transportation actually arrives and shockingly, it does on time. If you hire a service, it'll actually be done and with an expectation of quality. The list goes on. Of course it's not perfect and there's crappy people everywhere, but that's the exception, not the rule. And it's a massive difference. You've got so much fresh water, you crap in it. How fast food wasn't $50 per person, but rather $5.10. Also, how much civilization advances when the AC is on all day and everywhere. It's a blessing. AC, the one thing Europe seriously lacks despite being developed. How expensive many things are while certain things are very cheap, but there's always enough. I grew up in Costa Rica. When I moved to the US, everything was way cheaper. Then I realized how expensive everything in my country is. I mean, $13 for a small pizza is not okay. Not me, but I heard about a couple here in Spain who offered their home as a temporary retreat for minors who were about to be sent back to Africa. Can't really remember the details. One of the youngest kids took back with him a faucet, believing it would pour water whenever needed. Edit. Faucet equals water tap. Sorry, English is not my native language. Edit 2. Faucet equals faucet. I really thought I screwed up. Thanks for the input, pals. That is terribly depressing. That people don't care at all with the clothes or my overall appearance, weight, hair, etc. In Brazil I always get comments, good or bad, about how I look. Mainly from friends or family, but it's common to always talk about it. When I moved to Australia I made friends and never got a comment about any of these things. It was a big relief to find out that I can be myself and not worry about the tons of comments about something that doesn't matter at all. This. So much. I'm naturally very pale and strangers sitting next to me on the bus in Rio would point out that I needed to go to the beach. I love the lack of eye contact in the London Underground. That and, no gunshot sounds. Lack of a local warlord. Giant grocery stores are full of food and always fully stocked. Coming from Ukraine to USA in the 90s, my entire family's jaws dropped for hours. There wasn't too much of a disparity between what I knew and what was directly spoken to me compared to what was portrayed in media regarding the United States. However, the biggest and most glaringly obvious difference was how easy and common a thing it would be to have someone of another ethnic or racial background within arm's reach. My younger self, being more accustomed and familiar with brown skin, walking around Miami International and seeing so many beautiful and new tones of skin was shook. This is a bit of a cop-out that I answer because I usually live in wealthy countries, but I lived in a small town in Bolivia for 18 months and the two unexpected things that got to me when we left was cars everywhere, going to the toilet without it being an ordeal, and seeing your reflection. Such a weird thing. We lived in grass roof huts, so the only time you'd see your reflection would be in our tiny mirror. There's no glass or bathroom mirrors. I'm not vain, but it was very strange to suddenly see what I look like all the time. I had lost about 25 kgs, 55 lbs, while I was there, so that was even stranger. I've spent a good deal of time in Swaziland working with kids, only to learn that most of them had never seen their own faces for the same reason. It's really fun to take an iPad and use the selfie camera to take videos of the kids. They get very giggly and kinda sheepish, but even the shy kids push and shove to get a glimpse of themselves. I moved from South Africa to the UK, and the fact that you can actually live off minimum wage is just incredible. Pay rent and bills, buy food and slowly furnish your house. It's phenomenal. Also, the fact that most of the UK-born citizens think this is a terrible place to live is just beyond me. I always get asked why'd I leave sunny South Africa to come to this shithole. They just don't understand how good they've got it. People only compare their lives to what they see around them. You could be in the most prosperous, safest, most advanced nation to ever exist, but if your neighbor makes more money, you will still complain. Not getting suspicious when a stranger talks to you on the street. I can't get over it. I get anxious every time, but people in Canada don't seem to mind at all. Where I come from, when a stranger approaches you, you note the frick out. I was born in Canada, but I moved to Africa when I was 3 and then moved back when I was 8. The first time I heard an intercom at school with announcements and the school bell blew my mind. I grew up in South Africa and have been living in England for 20 years. 1. Cars stop when you walk up to a pedestrian crossing. 2. Double glazed windows are really good at keeping the warmth and the noise out. 3. I can walk around at night without thinking I'm going to get shot or robbed. 4. There are only a few people on building sites and the buildings get built in a quick and organized manner. 5. When things break, someone will come and fix it. I could go on all day. Everyone's always inside their houses. Back in my country, everyone would always go outside. You could see kids playing, old people talking to each other. There's always people outside. Because of that, I made a lot of friends. I wake up every morning to see my friends just sitting there outside of their houses, and we would greet and then walk around our neighborhood to meet our new friends, and then we'd talk or play basketball. It was fun. It was much more fun. Then I moved to Japan. I thought just like in my country, kids would always be outside, and I thought I could make friends easily with the neighborhood kids. Turns out, everyone is always inside. The whole neighborhood felt like a ghost town. There were no kids hanging out outside. The place has so many houses, but it felt very empty. Then it hit me. I missed my home. I became homesick. I had no friends. Every day I'm always inside the house, and it was the most boring part of my life. Then it became depression, and just got worse and worse. It has been 6 years. I have a job now. I'm always at home. Bought myself guitars, PS4 and a computer to make myself occupied, but I prefer going outside, meeting and talking with friends, rather than this kind of life. I still miss my previous home. I still miss my previous life. My roommate's co-worker is from Guatemala. He says that one of the best things about the US is that when you call for an ambulance, one actually shows up even if you aren't rich or important. Being able to walk around the city while using my phone. If I use it where I live, I get murdered, raped or kidnapped over a phone. Honduran. The discipline in driving. In my country, even when the signal light is color red, they just brush it off and continue accelerating. F-king morons. Most shops close early in the Netherlands compared to my origin country, Malaysia. Even house doctors' clinics close in the weekend, which was unbelievable to me at that time. To meet family members or close friends, we have to make appointment at least 2 weeks in advance, whereas in my origin country, it's normal to just show up at your family member's or friend's house with just a single call on the same day or few hours before. Sometimes people just show up unannounced and still being welcomed, even at very odd hours. I am now well adjusted to the custom in NL. My godparents adopted 2 girls from Ethiopia. They were straight terrified of anybody's dogs. Anybody's. In their hometown, kids were regularly attacked and killed by wild street dogs. I did Peace Corps in Ethiopia, I can understand that. Got chased by more than a few dogs while wandering alone in my time in Ethiopia. Dogs were considered more of a tool for guarding property most of the time and unfortunately tended to be treated badly most of the time. Poor people are fat. People are actually, not ironically, nice to each other. Coming from Soviet shithole where every man for himself, it was so unusual. Took me a few years to learn how to smile. Not me but a friend. She was 12 when the wall fell. She says the colors. There were so many colors, everywhere. In East Berlin all the buildings were dirty browns and grays, and government propaganda was black and white. Man, I wish I could remember, but I just heard either a podcast or audiobook talk about this and something along the lines of how the East didn't have the process to add a certain chemical to their paints that made everything so bland. I wish I could remember more or where I heard it. Maybe not a third world country per se, but I've lived in Turkey my whole life, and recently moved to the UK. First off, people here are super cold. They all seem like they want to die. There are also a lot of elderly people, like a lot. The biggest difference was that the crosswalks actually did something, like you could pass them and cars would stop. If I did anything other than sprint across the road when there were no cars around in Turkey, I'd be mushed by now. In the USA, cars in Portland will stop dead in the street if a pedestrian even comes close to a crosswalk. Where I work in Alexandria, Virginia, you need to be incredibly vigilant while walking around. If not for the aggressive drivers, then for the old folks and tourists who are looking everywhere but at the road. Electricity, water and basic utilities disappearing is not the norm. Police do their job 40% of the time at least, using toilet paper to clean yourself instead of water, which honestly is really gross for me. I don't know why. You can get an attachment for the toilet to spray water. It's popular in France, I think. My sister's boyfriend has one on his. Electrical power never goes off. Water too, lol. Cars. Devices are much cheaper in US than in CIS countries. Vacation to the US. People were nice. If you bumped into them or vice versa, saying sorry was accepted and common. Here is weakness. Clean streets. People respected the traffic lights. Going for a walk wasn't a life or death situation. Crap was way cheaper, even with tax. There wasn't a floating awe of hate and rage. Technology all around. Clean air. Water from the tap was drinkable. It was like heaven but with an obese population problem. How the smallest inconvenience can make people rant like they have serious depression. Apparently humans always worry about something or the other, like a worry list that always has to have something in it. So even if all your big problems are cleared out, they end up being replaced by the next set of problems, no matter how trivial. How clean it was in most areas, the structure and the uniformity of it all. How much cheaper things are, the general feeling and expectation of safety. How most people follow laws and rules just as part of the culture. Everyone isn't always trying to get away with stuff. There's always a few who break rules and etc, but just the fact that lawfulness and orderliness are a cultural expectation is huge. How clean everything is. Even bad areas are a lot of times nicer or cleaner than what I grew up with. There's less graffiti. There isn't trash everywhere all the time. And the rivers aren't mostly sewage. And people even clean up after their dogs. There's not just poop all over the sidewalks and everywhere. Being able to flush toilet paper. That people here island don't lock their door when they leave and have no security bars on their multiple windows. The general sense of safety in the fact that I could walk home alone at 4 AM and still be safe, if a bit nervous. You've encountered the lost treasure of Captain Gus Fishhead. Subscribe to receive some of his gold. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.